Good evening. My name is Professor 219. I teach an online class on how to survive as a conservative in today's messed up America. You don't need to know my real name. Last night we talked about Kamala Harris. It occurs to me that comparison between Sarah Palin and Kamala Harris is very instructive. First of all, Sarah Palin didn't sleep with the most powerful man in her political party in that state in order to get her start in politics. That's the first big difference. Here's another big difference. Sarah Palin had a job in between being mayor of Wasilla and governor of Alaska. The left-wing propaganda bureaus are never going to talk to you about it because that particular job made Sarah Palin not just look good, she looked brilliant and courageous and profoundly incorruptible. She was the ethics officer of the Alaska Natural Resources Board. They oversee billions of dollars in oil and natural gas drilling leases. Obviously, ethics is going to be a very big issue for an outfit like that. In her position as the ethics officer, Sarah Palin forced two prominent Republicans to resign from the board for ethics violations. One of them was the chairman of the Alaska GOP. She had very little power, and she stood up to people in her own party who had a lot of power. Is there anything like that on the resume of Kamala Harris from her years in San Francisco? For that matter, is there anything like that on the resume of Barack Obama from his years in Chicago? I have sometimes said that in 2008, Sarah Palin was better qualified than Barack Obama for the presidency, and there is no question that John McCain was better qualified. Sarah Palin had been the governor of a state for 2 years. She knew how to run a government with a budget in the many, many billions of dollars. The positions of governor of a state and president of the United States are analogous. Barack Obama had no experience at that level of government. Furthermore, Sarah Palin demonstrated her incorruptibility with that little stint on the Alaska Natural Resources Board. There's no such evidence of being incorruptible in Barack Obama's background, and as a matter of fact, he was peripherally involved in the notorious corruption of Rod Blagojevich. In the Illinois State Senate, Barack Obama was the guy who got all the bills passed that enabled Barack Blagojevich to pursue his corrupt schemes. And he was provided with a share of the loot by Tony Rezko, the bundler and fixer of this little team. Now, Blago and Rezko both went to federal prison. Barack Obama escaped prosecution, mainly because, unlike Blago, he was smart enough not to say anything incriminating on the phone. Let's get back to Sarah Palin and Kamala Harris. Everybody on the left called Sarah Palin stupid because she had kind of a backwoods way of speaking, much like I do. I would much rather have a person with a 98 IQ who is completely incorruptible in the Oval Office than a genius with a law degree from Harvard Law and graduated magna cum laude, wears a $1,000 suit, and spent 20 years in the guts of the Chicago political machine. and did nothing to indicate that he was not part of the corruption. Sarah Palin is one of many, many Republicans who showed a lot of promise in the past several years and was treated very shabbily by the media. Imagine them treating a Democratic woman candidate like that. Imagine them treating a Democratic woman candidate like that on Fox News. There would be a whole lot of screams about how Fox News is misogynist. Now let's move on to a couple of other topics. The 1619 Project and critical race theory. Both of them are completely bogus. Both of them are intended to make white people feel shame and guilt for simply being born white. The 1619 Project suggests that the actual founding date of our country was in 1619, when the first slaves were brought from Africa. And we fought the Revolutionary War to protect slavery. This is being presented as a history project. It completely ignores history. Slavery was the default setting of the entire human race up until around the year 1850. There was a fledgling abolitionist movement. It got started in the UK and spread to the United States, and then we had the Civil War. But before we had the Civil War, the English did technically abolish slavery. They didn't enforce this law uniformly or very well in their various holdings throughout their empire. For example, widespread slavery continued in India and in British holdings in Africa. White people didn't invent slavery. White people ended it at a tremendous cost in lives and lost limbs and money. There were over 600,000 white people who died in the Civil War. There were over 1 million who had their limbs amputated. Medicine was very primitive at that time. And the usual cure for being shot in the leg or the arm was to amputate that limb. Instead, we were constantly vilified and treated as oppressors. The 1619 Project is completely bogus just for this reason alone. Now let's talk about critical race theory. One of the main proponents of critical race theory is Derek Bell. And there's now a photo making the rounds on the internet of Barack Obama back in the late 1980s with his arm around Derek Bell. Evidently they were great partners. What a surprise. Critical race theory is probably the most divisive racial philosophy in the United States, more divisive than white supremacy, because it's going to be taught in the schools. They're already teaching it in some schools. It teaches us that the entire foundation of Western law, everything, going all the way back to medieval common law in England, is racist. It is all inherently racist. Even the United States Constitution with the 14th and 15th Amendments is racist. The entire overhaul of our system of laws that has occurred since the 14th Amendment was ratified, not good enough. The entire body of law must be rewritten by black law professors. White law professors are not allowed, no matter how left-wing they are, no matter how sensitive they are. This is what they want to do. this is now gaining traction in our public schools. Another thing I'd like to point out is a lot of these Hollywood movies that appear to espouse left-wing philosophy and left-wing themes really, when you dig down deep in them, they espouse conservative values. Women who protect their children rather than aborting them. Women who decide to proceed with the pregnancy rather than going with an abortion, no matter how terrible the odds. People who, particularly parents, who make bad life choices, and the bad life choices have a bad effect on the adults, but they also have a bad effect on the children. These are all conservative themes. You make bad life choices, you have no one to blame for that but yourself, and you are the one who suffers the consequences. And these movies are critically acclaimed and loved by the Hollywood elite. They don't even realize that they're espousing conservative values. Next, I'd like to talk very briefly about the efforts to control gun ownership. There was a story on Facebook of a 13-year-old in Pennsylvania who built a 12-gauge shotgun from scratch using his father's machine tools in his garage. It's a beautiful gun, stainless steel. He made the barrel of the shotgun from the drive shaft of a wrecked boat. He made the receiver and other metal parts out of sheet metal, and he made the stock out of a piece of firewood that they pulled out of the wood pile. Anybody can do this. The 13-year-old just proved it. You don't need a college degree in engineering. You need basic machining tools, basic machining skills. You can make the stock out of any piece of wood in the wood pile or a scrap 2x4. You can make the barrel out of any steel rod, and the rest of the parts can be stamped out of sheet metal. If you go to a salvage yard, you can find a big enough piece of sheet metal. The trunk lid of a 1993 Lincoln Continental would be fine, and the drive shaft of the same Lincoln Continental would work just fine for the gun barrel. The designer of the AK-47, Kalashnikov, was very big on the history of the Battle of Stalingrad in Russia. The defenders of Stalingrad were surrounded. They couldn't get any weapons. They were building their own. And they ran into problems because of a shortage of specialized materials, special parts, and special skills to create these sophisticated weapons. Well, Kalashnikov decided to address that problem by designing a fully automatic assault rifle for the infantry that could be made out of sheet metal, one steel rod for the barrel, and a 2x4 for the stock by someone with ordinary skills, ordinary materials, and ordinary tools. The blueprints for a fully automatic AK-47 are available on the internet, and if anybody tries to outlaw assault rifles, I think you'll see a sharp increase in interest in metal shop classes at your local community college. That's about all I have for tonight. Please give me a thumbs up here on YouTube if you like this. And subscribe to the channel and share this with your conservative friends on Facebook. I look forward to visiting you again with a few unpopular, inconvenient facts now and then. Have a great evening.